Morning, everyone. The Trade Union Congress is on, as some people will know. And today, Angela Rayner is going to be speaking about the Labour's Workers' Rights Bill, whatever it's going to be ending up calling, but the workers' rights legislation that they're going to enact in the first 100 days. And Angela Rayner is still delivering this. You might have thought to yourself, well, after the reshuffle, and she does have a different job now in the shadow cabinet, that maybe it would have gone to someone else. And I think the reason not will, apart from the fact Angela Rayner, I think, seems to want to have ownership of that, is the fact that, sorry, I'm trying to fiddle with my screen. There we go. The fact that the election in theory could come at any time. And given that this is legislation they're going to enact immediately, absolutely. They've been saying for a long time, first 100 days, this is the first 100 days. So obviously you don't then pass it on to someone else to start again with. So although I don't know what she's going to be saying in her speech, I will just point another thing out. So at various points, I've been talking about Labour's policies on this, and it's like, these are from their sort of working manifesto document. The last update we got was April this year, and it was published in Labour List. We know it's been revised a bit because the National Policy Forum, that's its job, that's what it does. We are expecting to see some of the details of it quite soon. I don't know how soon, but quite soon we're supposed to be starting to see what the new shape of it is. But Angela Rayner is going to be giving a speech today where she's going to be setting out these workers' rights. And the reason I can sort of talk about it here is because Sky News yesterday published an article where they reckon they have some of the details of it. So I thought I would go over it effectively. Also, Dino saying, wasn't expected to see Phil. Glad to see he's feeling better. I still have COVID. And I still have most of the symptoms of it. What I don't have is the sore throat, and the sore throat was what really hurt. So I don't care about everything else. I will possibly be grumpy in another week if the other symptoms haven't gone, but for now they have. Right, anyway, let's crack on with it. So this is the Sky News article. There is a link in the description below, as well as to another article that I'm going to go on to after it as well. There's a load of stuff that they go on beforehand, which is mostly a load of twaddle, so don't worry about that. I'm more interested in what they think, so I am going to have to keep drinking this. I think this is what I'm interested in, what they think Rayner is going to mention in the speech. Now, what I will say, the way they're writing this, Rayner's clearly not just given them an advance copy of the speech, so there will be other things in it as well. But at least we can go through this. So the first, also these won't be unfamiliar because remember, they're not like brand new policies. These are, excuse me, these are policies that Labour have had for years, and they've just been refining them. So we're just looking for any refinements in them. So the first one, ban fire and rehire. So fire and rehire, as most people will know, is a situation where the boss goes to some workers and goes, oh, I don't really like paying you what I'm paying you, or I don't really like, the conditions I've set for you. So, well, we agreed that when I took the job, didn't we? We've struck a contract. We've got a contract, you see. And the employer goes, yeah, but I don't like it now. I want to give you worse pay and worse conditions. So I'm sorry, we've got a contract. So if the worker doesn't agree to just voluntarily accept lower paying conditions, the employer goes, right, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to sack you, right? So the contract's gone. And then I'll re-advertise the job, but you can have the job. I'll rehire you. That's fine. But then it'll be a different contract. And, if that person doesn't have the confidence or the ability to go, well, sod you, then I'll go and work for a proper company, then that's what they do. We know it happens a lot. So Labour will be banning that practice. It is difficult, though. Now, it does note in this article, it's worth going through it all because sometimes something sounds easy to do and it's not. So it says, at the moment, businesses are meant to make contractual changes to employees' working conditions through agreement, but they currently have the right to do so unilaterally by terminating their contracts, rehiring them on new ones. This is designed to be used only in exceptional circumstances. Labour says it's been abused. Labour is committed to outlawing the practice by adapting unfair dismissal and redundancy legislation to prevent workers being dismissed for failing to agree a worse contract. The problem is there will always have to be, because you said to yourself, if there never had to be any exceptions, then you would go, okay. Sometimes you could argue, for example, for a small company, if that small company, really sorry, if that small company, there's Lucky's Children's mentioned Asda's doing higher, a large company like that never has an excuse for it. Let's say a small company, and it's going to some trading conditions have changed, and it's like, right, the business is really struggling now. We cannot afford to carry on like this. We're going to have to try and cut costs. And if some of it was like a cost to the wages or something like that, and it wasn't going below minimum wage or anything, then you might be able to negotiate with your small number of employees, because you're a small business, that they do that. And if they don't, it's like, well, then we have to close the business. So you could argue in a situation like that, it's like, well, they lose the jobs if you close the business anyway. Whereas even if they leave and get another job somewhere else, you then have the option of hiring someone on lower pay type of thing. So you can always argue there's always an exception, but it should just be that. They can always legislate based on the size of the company. They can indeed, yes, they can absolutely do that. At the same time, nor would I wouldn't want small companies to feel that they can just do it just because they're a small company though either. See, that's the trick. There's even a small company will still look for excuses to pay its staff less well, potentially. Although it also has to be said that small companies tend to have better relationships with their employees because the business owner is working day to day with them. So they tend to have a better rapport than in a large company where you've got multiple layers of middle management dehumanizing the whole process, I suppose. But there we go. I'm sure just this comment there says, so blimey, you look okay, Phil. Well, there's the coffin. You didn't have to become a metaphor for the UK, but you did, except the UK won't recover as fast. I've also been fine for the last 13 years. It's the first time I've been this ill. But anyway, next one is, hang on, there we go. Day one employment rights. So at the moment, so you have probation. In some jobs, you have probation periods. I've had jobs where I've had probation periods. They're fine in themselves. It's basically a way of a company saying, look, there's a lot of skills to this job that good dear me. There's a lot of skills in this job that are difficult to ascertain before you're doing the job. We can't be 100% certain just based on your past experience or your qualifications or your interview or any test we can give you at an interview. So because we're taking a bit of a leap in the dark, we're going to give you a probationary period of whatever, 6 months, a year. The fact that it can be up to 2 years is absolute madness to me. I don't see how it can be 2 years, but 6 months to a year, whatever. And if you're not passing muster, then it means that we can easily get rid of you because, sorry, you're just not doing it. And and that's fine. What's not fine is that when you're on these probationary periods, your basic employment rights are also suspended. It's like, well, no, you shouldn't be. Even on a probationary period, it should be assumed that you are going to be a long-term employee. So you should have those rights from day one, which is what Labour is saying. So the actual thing it's saying here is this: at the moment, the law leaves workers waiting up to 2 years to access some of their rights. Labour says it'll end this arbitrary system, scrap qualifying time for basic rights, such as unfair dismissal. Because even if you're on a probationary period, and in theory, the idea of a probation period is to allow the employer to dismiss you quite easily, it should still be for the fact that you haven't been able to do the job as they expected. It shouldn't be for something arbitrary, you know. As well as sick pay and parental leave as well. So the policy here, and again, this isn't new. We knew about this anyway. It's just expected to be confirmed again today. I don't have a green screen. That's not going to fall down. I have a V cam. Sorry though, but my cough. Oh dear. Says Labour is keen to stress this is not a 2-year ban on dismissal and would not impact anyone being given a probation period by their employer. All it is just saying that they still have those basic employment rights. The probationary period is still the probationary period. If a person isn't able to do the job to the expected standard, which will be made clear in the documentation, if they're not able to do it to the expected standard, then they can be dismissed. That's all it is. Yeah, you're only entitled to an unfair dismissal claim after 2 years. Yes, so that will be going. The next one, of course, 0 hours contracts. 0 hours contracts is another tricky one. It is going a bit, Theresa May, at a Tory conference. Yes, sorry. Ban on exploitative 0 hours contracts. This will give employees the right to request a contract reflecting the hours they work after they've been there for 12 weeks. Workers will have a right to decline to use this right, which I don't know about that. I don't know about. The problem is, as soon as you put workers in a position where they can choose to forego certain statutory rights, it's almost like they're encouraged to do so. But the 0 hours contracts is one of these where I'm sort of happy for the situation to be improved, reviewed a couple of years later, and then improved again. So it might be just that. Coughing up, it might be a gold watch. I've not been swallowing any gold watches now. So workers will have a right to decline to use this right. Labour says some details still need to be worked through on how to do this. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. This is one of the areas where the provisions had been watered down before the summer. Yes, I think this will be the sort of thing where maybe we just see over a period of 10 years, hopefully them being removed completely. I would just want to see them removed completely. But there we go. Hi, Daily Blase. Captain Bart Roberts saying, I worked for a very right-on company in Brighton, sacked me 2 days before I was due to be working there for 2 years. This was in the 90s. I mean, I only started working in the 90s, in the late 90s at that. But it was very much in teaching. In teaching, it was... there were sometimes, I think twice I had a job where it had a probationary period. Mostly it didn't, but it tended to vary. They sometimes did, sometimes didn't. Pensioners who want a bit of extra money are okay with 0 hours contracts. That's a tiny amount. Yes, absolutely. I have, and that's what I think makes it tricky, because there is a case for allowing, because when proponents of 0 hours contracts big it up, they talk about, oh, but it allows workers to be flexible as well. Yes, absolutely. There are some workers who like that flexibility to it, but it also exploits a hell of a lot of workers. So what you need, and it's never easy when you're trying to balance anything, what you need is to be able to maintain the flexibility without the exploitation, really, isn't it? No more 0 hours contracts, no more fire and rehire. Well, the fire and rehire is definitely going, because that is binary. There is no, that it's really quite simple. Are you sacking someone because they refused to take up a poorer contract? That should be quite easy to deal with. 0 hours contracts, we will see. I think it's something they're going to have to keep revisiting. I think it's a case of, we'll do this, then we'll review it, then we'll find out what's worked and what's not worked and what still needs to be done. And then in a couple of years' time, I think more. That's what I think I would see coming. Easy one here. Repeal of the 2016 Cameron and 2022 Sunak anti-union legislation. Labour says it will rewind the clock to the 2010 settlement on trade union laws. 2016 Trade Union Act introduced a new requirement of 50% of union members to vote in a ballot for strike action. It would also change the laws to allow strikes by electronic ballot. That absolutely huge. It's ridiculous that you can't. Absolutely ridiculous that you cannot vote electronically. It's Labour is saying here, argues it brings it in line with how the Conservative Party elects its leader. So the Conservatives can't claim that it allows like any fiddling of the electoral process because, yeah, they use it to choose their own leader. So there we go. Oh, make it so that you cannot be kicked off job seekers allows if you don't take a 0-hour contract. Yes. Yeah, I think I would favor that. I think really. See, I'll tell you the problem. I was reading something recently, and it was about this woman. And so she was on universal credit, and she was working like a few hours a week. And then she had to fill in a form, and she'd put down that she was working 16 hours a week. And that's the cutoff. So then she had a universal credit completely cut. No letter about it until after it had already been cut. Like, first she found out about it, she couldn't afford her groceries, right? Because the money hadn't gone into the bank. So she, excuse me. So first of all, she's fairly frantic about this, and she's going, what's going on here? So there's no sliding scale here. It's a cutoff. And the mad thing about it was she doesn't work 16 hours a week. She was just rounding off. She works 15 and a half hours a week. So she was below the cutoff. And okay, it was her, and she recognized it's her error in filling the form out. But the fact that there was no communication, the fact there was no, oh, do you realize that you're at the thing? At which point she could have said, oh, it's not actually 16, it's 15 and a half. I just rounded off. I didn't think it meant that big a deal. So at the moment, the way benefits is designed, it's very much designed to get people off them as soon as you think you can. Even if it is 16 hours, that is not enough. Unless it's a bloody well-paid job, that is not enough to live on. So, so there's a lot of things that do need dealing with when it comes to anything like that. Any in-work or out-of-work benefits. But I would certainly say yes, because if you're forced to accept a 0 hours contract, that is a massive pain in the ass, because it's like, well, so you'll carry on getting you'll carry on getting universal credit, won't you? Well, it depends how many hours you work. Well, I don't know how many hours I work. 0. I'll be working 0 unless I know otherwise. So then you have to keep changing it, don't you? Oh dear. You say this is what I mean, where Starmer's not radical enough, still playing within a Tory framework. No, he's not. Absolutely not. When it comes to, he's working with the Overton window. The Overton window, for those who don't know, is if you imagine all the possible political policies, all the ones you could possibly do, left and right and up and down and everywhere. The Overton window are the ones that the key voters consider credible. Now, the fact that the Overton window tends to look like it's not a million miles away from at least moderate conservatism is because, do you know what? The Conservatives have been in power for a long time, and they tend to be better communicators, and the media keep pushing these policies as well. But you cannot, if you stray outside the Overton window, you lose votes. It's really that simple. It's very much a science, not an art. It is that simple. If you stray out of it. Now, that doesn't mean to say you can't adopt any policies outside of it, but you have to be aware every time you do, you're losing votes. So how many votes can you afford to lose? But there we go. Nadine Dorris was in a very lucrative 0 hours contract. Yes, she was, wasn't she? but her book's not coming out as soon as she thought it was now. Liz Truss has got a book coming out. We've seen that. That's going to be amusing. No, don't buy me a Lemsip. I hate Lemsip. Can you teach me not to despise the Tory party as much? He'd be the best teacher in the world if he could. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the way I look at it, it's a complete waste of time hating anything. I know some people do, and I can't help it. It's a waste of energy. I counter it. That's what I just think. Counter it. You know, forget about the Tories. Think about the people that still support the Tories. How can you persuade them? Because that's how you beat them. You know, you persuade people that support them not to support them. And so there's no point in expressions of hate aren't going to do that. Because apart from anything else, you risk making them think you hate them as well. Like if you say, I hate Tories, it's like, but what do you mean by Tories? Because some people who vote Conservative might think that they're Tories. When I would disagree, by the way. I think there's a difference between Tories and Conservatives. But the two terms are used interchangeably, even by themselves. So you have to be quite clear who you mean. So, you know, you have to build alliances. You have to persuade people. And hate just takes a lot of time. I can't be doing with it. When you've got a record, things to point so you can shift the window, what people believe you could shift. The window will shift. The window shifted under the last Labour government. The window has now shifted under this Conservative government, and it will shift again under Labour. It won't go streaming across to the far right, to the far left. Sorry, it certainly won't go streaming across to the far right. But you know, it will move. They always move a little bit. Right, next one I wanted to have a little look at. Oh no, I'd actually just get rid of that and put a new one on. Because speaking of Labour list, which I did earlier, they've got an article out which has some research. Polling research on support for Labour's policies. So it's making the point particularly that Conservative voters, because they're showing an awareness here, thankfully, too many people don't. There's too many people say, oh, a majority of the country in favour of this. It's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. But when it's like a majority of people who voted Conservative in 2019, that does matter. So it's noting here of 2019 Conservative voters, which remember included a large number of like working class people, you might say. It says 2/3 of them support workers having a day one right to protection from unfair dismissal. Surprise, surprise. Same number back a ban on fire and rehire. The same proportion also backs day one rights and a ban on fire and rehire. 62%. Now, this just says of the public support giving those working in the gig economy new rights and protections. But it does say 59% of Conservative voters. Now, that's important because at the moment, the way the Conservatives are approaching the next election, assuming they want to win it, I really don't think they want to win it anymore. But assuming they do, they can't try and win new voters over, or not very many. It's about retaining the current voters, isn't it? Or the ones that they had in 2019. So if there's large numbers, like if you see 59% of 2019 Conservative voters are in favour of these new workers' rights, then the Conservatives are going to struggle to challenge them. Because this new workers' rights legislation proposal, the Tories will be attacking it left, right, and centre, won't they? Oh, Steve Kirk, thank you very much. £10 super chat. Sorry, I'm late. Oh, you are, because we've got a few minutes left. I don't think my voice will last any longer anyway. But yeah, if you've got, I would say, even if you've got like 1/3 of 2019 Conservative voters in favour of Labour's workers' rights, it's very tricky for the Conservatives to attack them. They will attack them. They have to attack them. But they will then be attacking a significant number of their voters. But if it's like 59% of them, tricky. And the question is, will Rishi Sunak treat it as tricky? will he be conscious of the fact he has to play it carefully, or will he just rush into it like a bull in a china shop, attacking it all? Because I'll tell you something, at the moment, it's been quite notable in the news. Business groups are just, every time you talk about business groups and political parties, it's all about how they're showing approval of Labour's plans. And obviously, when you've got the bulk of major unions also approving of Labour's workers' rights plans as well, the Tories are going to find it very, very tough to challenge them if they don't even have, if they can't come up with a way of doing so that appeals to voters. In terms of the ban on 0-hours contracts, 63% of voters, 60% of Tory voters. See, I mean, you're looking at things like this, and it just shows you how extreme the Tories have got, that they have basically adopted or pursued policies that have actually thrown them against many of their own voters. Don Do That saying, everything's so broke that the Tories want Labour to get elected to take the blame. No, I don't think so. I think at best, they may want them to sort of fix some of the mess, clear up their mess. That's maybe how some of them see Labour. So they come in, wreck the place, and then it's like Labour are the hired help who come and clean up your mess. They don't want to do it so they can blame it, because Labour will make things better. Helen Wilkes, £4 super chat. Thank you very much. We have almost come to the end there. Fruitback Cat, I desperately want to hear what Phil has to say, but I also really want him to go and chill and take care of himself. I will be doing so in a couple of minutes, I assure you. I thought I would have to give it a go. I've been very much on voice rest for multiple days. The only speaking I did yesterday was to record 3 videos. I whisper to my partner or WhatsApp her. And I should be resting my voice again today, apart from the videos, which may only be 2 on my own channel today. I hope I'm not contagious on the march. I will not be going anywhere until I'm sure I'm not contagious. But I really shouldn't be. I mean, it's still nearly 2 weeks away. But yeah, I will not be leaving this house until my symptoms are gone, like the potentially contagious symptoms are gone, and I am testing negative consistently. I will just not go on the march if I'm still like this. But if I'm still like this on the day of the march, I'll be very grumpy. It's odd how the far left criticise Labour if business leaders approve of their policies. It's like this thing is that, you know how some people will say, if that's something they say riles up someone who's like on the other tribe, like in a different political faction, and they'll say, oh, I must have done something right because it's pissing off all the right people. And it's like, no, because that doesn't work that way, does it? But that's how they're thinking, isn't it? Now, there is a case in which you don't automatically say because business leaders approve of something that it's good, because it's like, well, why? You know, if they're approving of it because it's actually going to help businesses flourish, well, that is good. If they're approving of it because it allows businesses to squeeze more out of their workers, that's not so good. But like I said, we don't just have business leaders saying they're fully in favour of Labour's policies. We have trade unions saying they're in favour of them. I know Unite are like Sharon Graham's having a moan at them. I would say that's party politics, or in her case, union politics. Unite is a very militant union. It's got a few interesting characters in it, and I think Sharon Graham is basically, because note, you know, she's not attacking Labour really. She's just basically saying, oh, I'm not sure you're really going to do as good a job as you could. That's essentially what it boils down to. So I think she's just keeping people on side in Unite. I don't see it as a huge problem. I think Sharon Graham is actually doing, you know, she came in, remember, she came in saying that she wanted to stop messing about with party political games and to focus on doing what's best for her members. So I think when she does make a statement that sounds like, well, that sounds like a bit party political, doesn't it, Sharon? I think she's just doing it, you know, to keep the nutters on her own side on side. Unite supported Brexit, didn't they? Yeah, but that was McCluskey, wasn't it? I don't actually know what Sharon Graham's particular position on it is. But, you know, that's because pissing laxatives were in charge at the time. But, you know, unite, chuntering, that's fine. And that's what they should do anyway. Because, again, I'll say this for Sharon Graham, right? If anyone's been paying any attention to the TUC, so, I've forgotten who it was. There was one of the union leaders made a speech about asylum. And I thought, and I had no issue with it as a speech. It was like, yeah, you know, they were making some good points on it. But I thought, but what's it got to do with workers' rights? This is the Trades Union Congress. You're supposed to be promoting workers' rights. What's it got to do with it? You know, it doesn't matter whether I approve of the speech or not. It's like there could be a union leader get up and say, oh, it's an absolute disgrace that we're not allowing Russia to commit genocide in Ukraine, because there's some that would like to, right? What's that got to do with workers' rights either? Whereas Sharon Graham, when she makes a speech, what's it always about? Yes, she might be chuntering about, oh, but Labour aren't good enough or stuff like that. But what's she talking about? Workers' rights. Every time she talks about anything, what's she talking about? Workers' rights. That's what you're supposed to do in a union. That's what you're supposed to be focused on. You know, it's the job of the unions to promote workers' rights, and then it's the job of Labour to legislate for them when they get into government. But there we go. Yeah, we have run out of time there. I'm afraid I'll have to call it there. Thank you very much for coming on, everyone. Hopefully I shall be a little bit better again next time. But have a very good day. And until next time, I will see you later. And don't forget to click the like button.